Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Foreign Correspondents Talk series 2024. I am Alan Herrera. I am here on behalf of the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents, AFPC-USA, and I run AFPC-USA's editorial operations. And part of that gives me part of my duties. I have the opportunity to meet many cool and interesting journalists, particularly the foreign correspondents who my organization represents. And I get to hear their stories and share their experiences. And it is always a very fun, very enlightening, opportunity for me. And today I am pleased to share with you all that I am sitting with today's guest, who is Salem Solomon. She is an Eritrean American journalist working in the United States, and she currently serves as the senior editor for Voice of America, VOA's Africa division. In her role, she collaborates with multiple people, stringers and reporters across Africa. She brings this wide range of stories from the African continent to the organization's international audience. So she has a lot of wonderful experience and a lot of responsibility that I think will provide anybody who's listening and watching, today. You'll just learn a lot from this wonderful, esteemed journalist. So thank you, Salem. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's always such a pleasure. So I will just give you the floor. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself? Perhaps I've, of course, given a little bit of an intro into you and what you do, but could you share a bit more about that and perhaps like how you got into journalism overall? Mm.
Thank you for that lovely introduction again. And I, as you've nicely introduced me, I am from a very restricted country in terms of press freedom. I come from Eritrea. It's an East African country. I started journalism in my home country, believe it or not, and Eritrea is ranked the lowest when it comes to press freedom on indexes like, the Committee to Protect Journalists or Reporters Without Borders. They have an annual list of countries where there's restriction or press freedom, but Eritrea ranks, and I think until last year ranks the lowest, even sometimes under North Korea. So that really shows you the nature in which reporters are operating in my home country. How I got into journalism, I will be honest with you that I didn't think or see the purpose and the real purpose and the impact of journalism until later in my career. Earlier, I was in college and, I was a nightly news anchor in my home country, and there was only one TV station. It's a government-owned, a government-ruled, controlled TV station. It's called Air TV. I used to be an anchor, an English news anchor, nightly news anchor for a couple of years there. When I reflect back on my early days of journalism, we didn't have any journalistic control over some of the stories, especially local stories that we were covering. Some of the international stories we had, the government had a subscription to Reuters and things like that, and so it's different. But when it comes to local reporting and actually really doing investigative work or stories that might have impact in the local population, and also public service oriented reports. We didn't, in my experience, I didn't do much of that when I was in the country, and I didn't really do stories that I learned in college because we had journalism classes that reflect and are somewhat the same here in the US, where you have free press. So when I look back, I didn't have a lot of freedom to report on local stories. We just translated what was said or given from our from the only TV station there. But since leaving the country for education and family purposes, I left Eritrea, and I've had multiple journalism experiences that really, really helped me not only hone my experience, but also opened my view and what journalism can do, which eventually led me to VOA. But I've worked in American newsrooms. I ended up going to University of Missouri for I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's one of the best journalism schools. I started there, and then I finished at University of South Florida, St. Pete, which is close to Poynter Institute. I'm sure you might
Yes.
be familiar with their work as well. But I got my master's from University of South Florida, St. Pete. In there, even when I was there, I was writing op-eds in prominent news outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, foreign policy, on top of working for newspapers in Florida and other places. So I've had a breadth of experience in print, radio, and TV, but my start is broadcast journalism on TV. So I have a breadth of experience, and I've taught in journalism schools as well, throughout my career before coming to VOA. But before coming to VOA, I started this website called Africa Talks. It's I saw the need, actually, working in mainstream here in the US. I saw the need to cover the diaspora, the African diaspora, as I felt at the time, and I still feel a certain way now that I'm VOA. That might have changed because we do broadcast not only to the African diaspora or the international audience, but we also tap into our diaspora commentators for stories. But that was not existent when I was in Missouri, when I was in Florida, before coming to Washington, D.C. So I started this initiative and a talk show to invite people who contribute to the betterment of their countries, or people who have been uprooted because of conflict and several difficulties in their home countries. Anyway, long story short, my journalism journey has taken me into different newsrooms that I sometimes felt like I was the only Black woman in a newsroom, or the only foreigner, or the only woman, and I've experienced different platforms and different settings to really hone into either improve my experience as a person, as a journalist, but also diversify my reporting throughout. And then I am now at VOA, and I started and I speak two languages in the Horn of Africa. I speak two of them, but we broadcast, we have 10 services in the Africa division, and we broadcast in 17 languages to 50 plus countries. And so I speak two of the languages, including English. So, so I work with a lot of reporters on the ground. And when I say, we broadcast to Africa, we also have cross-continental collaboration on stories that we might pursue that that involve maybe collaborating with our Mandarin service colleagues if there's a China-Africa story, or that involves with collaborating with our Russian service colleagues if there's a Russia-Africa story. So it's not just limiting to the continent in terms of reporting, but we have a big institution where there's a lot of collaboration happening with reporters from all walks of life. And I'm not kidding when I say this. I mean, we cover places where there's deliberate stifling of information or lack of press freedom. So it really hit home for me to come to VOA and to broadcast back to my home country, where I'm not really allowed to do investigative reporting or a reporting that might be critical of a ruling party, or reporting that might shine a light on people that maybe the government has disappeared. And so I really, I'm very lucky in this position right now to cover and work with reporters from all across the globe, but also more specifically on a day-to-day across the continent.
I mean, I'd say you definitely are. I mean, this is fascinating. Of course, because of your experience coming from a country that, yes, has, you're right. Yeah, the lowest levels of press freedom in the world. I mean, I believe I've seen it ranked that way, certainly in the Reporters Without Borders report, but also reports from Freedom House, another one. Yeah. And it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. And I mean, I really admire just of course all of these initiatives, right, that you've taken part in. But given this environment, that you grew up in, right? This environment where, like you said, right, people have to be careful to not say anything, right, that doesn't go against, the ruling party, that doesn't go against, what the government would prefer, right? So when did you realize that, like, oh, I wanted to do this, I want to be a journalist? Did you always have perhaps a fascination with access to information?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I had like a specific moment of an aha moment. As I said, my maturity into journalism world really evolved over time. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not like I had an aha moment and I saw the disparity and the limitation that it existed in my home country immediately. I wasn't really aware of the fact that people are really paying dear price for simply writing or publishing a newspaper. My home country was not always like that. Eritrea, when it got its independence 30 plus years ago, the country had a very vibrant press. There wasn't a lot of funding or money to sustain these newsrooms, but we had about 11 newspapers that were very vibrant until 2001. There was a significant shift in that, where there was a media crackdown by the government that saw the arrest and shutting down of newspapers in my home country, and parliamentarians were arrested. There was a conflict, border conflict, that impacted this change in the country's trajectory and the way that democracy was burgeoning. It was early in the country's development when it comes to journalism as well, and so newspapers were heavily hit by that. The reporters and editors that published, say, for instance, asking for accountability from the government, or the implementation of a constitution that was drafted, still not implemented, and published in their newspapers, were targeted and arrested. And in fact, just last week, I wrote a story about one of them that got a prize from Sweden. He's a Swedish Eritrean journalist. Dawi Tisak is his name. And you might come across this if you look into it. But he's one of many, 20 plus, including politicians and parliamentarians, as I said, that were arrested and never seen again. They are the longest jailed journalists on the continent. And when I talk about jailed journalists, you might understand that when someone is detained or jailed, that they might have lawyer visitation rights, or they might have access to their families. That is not what we're talking about when it comes to Eritrean's case. These people are detained and arrested and never heard from again. And I speak with family members. This is one of them. But Suyum Tsahaye is another reporter who was basically the founder of the state TV that we talk about. If you see archival videos of the struggle for independence from separation from Ethiopia, most of the videos were documented by this reporter. And once he was not in line with the government's needs, or was politically seen during that crackdown, they disappeared and they've never been seen before. So these are the risks that reporters from my home country take. So I'm lucky when it comes to being able to continue my profession as a journalist here abroad without the risk of someone waiting for me outside of my home or my newsroom to or retaliate against a reporting that I've done, or a story that I've written or published. So this is the nature in which that I realized how fragile and how risky the profession is. And so, as I said, I didn't have an aha moment, and I'm giving you examples of what happens to reporters from my home country, what has happened, and we don't even know still. We continue to report these stories because nobody knows if they're alive or dead. families haven't had any closure. And so this is the nature in which we're talking about now when it comes to the most restrictive and restrictive environments where the price and the sacrifice that people make is very, very monumental and impacts families. Yeah, I realized later in my life after I came to the US and started working in newsrooms that the value and the public service that you could do to make a difference with journalism and hold, authorities to account, tell stories that are untold, connect people, inform people. The value of journalism, especially true and tried journalism, is very meaningful to me, and I feel like it's a purpose in life instead of just a job. So yeah, as I said, I evolved through, matured eventually to really understand what journalism can be for people who are in need of information most, especially in times of conflict, in times of war, in times of a need to confirm a news, a story that they don't have access to. So yeah, I would say I eventually grew into this aha moment.
I mean, I think that's very interesting because I feel like many people, right, they have this idea that, all right, you're in a career. You're in this career because you had a very orthodox, very straightforward line, right, to get to where you want to go. And like, I mean, that hasn't been my experience. You're talking to somebody who managed to get a break very early. And I mean, I didn't even get my bachelor's degree until I was 31, you know? And that surprises a lot of people, right? Because they assume, and I mean, it gets to, let me put it this way. You mentioned, for example, about how like earlier being the only woman or the only Black woman, right, in certain newsrooms, right? And there are certain prejudices, you could say, right? And these ideas that people have about your abilities and about your education. So people would meet me, right? And they would ask me things like, oh, where'd you go to school? Or like they assumed, right, that like, oh, you went here, you went there. And I would say, no, I actually don't have a degree. And then the way that they looked at me would flip, very, very quickly. And I would think to myself, okay, so do you think I belong here or not, right? And it's very interesting because it's always so difficult to find your own way, especially when you genuinely care about something like this, right? Like freedom of the press. I personally I didn't realize how much support and how many wonderful people I would meet, right? Just embarking on a much more unorthodox path, right? But I'm fortunate again that there are these people who support me, but I also encountered just some significant, pushback. And it really gets to the heart about what it's like speaking as a Hispanic male, right? Just about different experiences faced by minorities in the United States. So, has there ever been a moment, perhaps, where, you felt like you doubted your own abilities, right? Like your ability to succeed, perhaps, like in the newsroom, in the industry? Yeah.
It's a very good question. I am a very confident person, so I don't know. Sometimes that might really, sometimes overconfidence. I don't know. But I will say this. I will say this about, I'm glad you shared your experience and not having an orthodox kind of route to the profession. I always say this to my students, or I've taught, here in the U.S. as well in journalism classes. Journalism is one profession that it is very practical. So it's not something you do in theory. So whether you have a background in education or you come from a different route, it's something that is learned over and better. You become better over time. It is something that you learn as you do. You can have PhDs, you could have master's degree, you can have any kind of you know, um, background, it doesn't mean that you can become the best journalist. Storytelling is an art, and it's a creative work. And so I would say that just in the outset of this, that it's a practical profession, that you need to do the good old shoe leather reporting to get better at it, and you get better at it as you report. One anecdote from my personal experience: when I first came to the US, I did have journalism experience. I did have my bachelor's degree. So I checked all the boxes, but this is a new country. It's a completely different, you know, uh, set of challenges as an immigrant that you face. There are limitations that maybe I don't know much about, say, for instance, in the middle of Missouri, to report about a certain issue. Or I was I moved to Florida after that. I remember I was working for a newspaper which did like business reporting, a Tampa Bay Business Journal. You might know the America Business Journals. They're all over the US. And so I didn't have any business reporting background, but I didn't go at it in thinking, I don't have a business journalism background, so I'm not going to take this opportunity. I jumped in. I took it, and you find positive things in these opportunities. So if I didn't have a business background in reporting, and the beauty of journalism is you get to meet a lot of experts. You get to meet and learn and grow every day with every story. So this is why I always say it's a practical profession, that you learn, you get to speak with the most incredible people that are doing amazing work in their line of work. So you're not the expert. You are speaking to the experts to convey that to average people. But I went into it thinking, okay, I'm going to improve my writing. I'm going to improve my network of people that I'm going to be interviewing. And I lasted long. And I was doing it as I was doing my master's on top of like a full-time master's program plus reporting. And so what I came away after that, and I had a really strict early in the morning deadline. It was not fun, let's put it that way, but it was worth it because first, I didn't turn it down, and second, I learned a lot from it. And I think this is the attitude a lot of journalists should be taking, because our profession is a very humbling profession. You could be a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist today, and you could be jobless tomorrow because of the industry and the way our journalism's business model is not really sustainable. And so I would say, whether you have those doubts early in your career, or things that make you feel like, I'm not an expert in this, or I haven't done this, just don't be afraid. Just go for it, and you will find something to learn from it, from that experience. And so that's the attitude I've carried, and that's what I meant by I'm a little bit confident when it comes, sometimes overconfident. But I learned, I had moments where I not doubt myself, but I've had moments where I had that made me feel like maybe this is not the path I want to take, but maybe it's a path I've taken to take me somewhere else. So I balanced that to make me feel confident about what my next move would be, because my passion has always been the continent, or covering issues that are within where I'm from, and things that really shine a light on stories that I just talked about earlier. And so, and it led me there eventually. So I never stopped or I never let doubt stop me from pursuing what I wanted. And level of education, or level of, I don't know, experience shouldn't stop anybody that has ambition in terms of this profession, because it is really a practical profession. You get better as you do stories. And anybody who tells you writing is easy, I always say it's not. They don't know what they're doing. But I always say that you get better. It's a muscle you have to flex. It's not being afraid to reach out to people to learn. You have to have that curiosity. Always reach out to people to learn more. You have to have that curiosity in this profession. Be curious about the world around you. and how things work. And that way you can also help connect with the average people who might have the same questions but are not able to access information. So that's how I would answer that question.
I think that that's a very, it's a wonderfully detailed question, detailed response, I should say, detailed response. Because there there's so much that, there's so much that goes into it. There's so much that goes into it, right? I mean, I have my extended family. Again, I was born in New York City, right? I was born in New York City, but my extended family hails from the Dominican Republic, right? And Colombia, right? Both countries that have had very politically volatile, histories of dictatorship, long histories of violence and of media suppression. And I was always remarkably fascinated, by this. I grew up hearing stories about, again, just family members who were, subjected, right, to government intimidation and whatnot, and certainly reading histories, just and accounts in general. And it was something that made me very passionate, right, about freedom of information, right? Freedom of information and just going out there and putting my best foot forward. And people say fake it until you make it, right? And I certainly, I can tell you that I personally did not have that confidence at the start. I had really terrible imposter syndrome. Like I don't even know how I got out of bed in the morning, you know? But at the end of the day, right, we're here because we care about the same thing, right? We care about the same thing. And I mean, I'm so glad that not only that about the fact that you've been able to tell these stories, but the fact that this passion it was seen, it was recognized. You had people who've supported you. And I mean, I suppose to really like to get to the heart of this and wrap this up, I mean, what would you say? What would you say to, a correspondent or an aspiring correspondent who's looking to enter the field, perhaps work, somewhere in the United States? Of course, networking, is important. Meeting those people, right, who believe in you, right? I can tell that you've had so much of that, right? And that's what's made you, the person who you are today. But like, what would you say to aspiring correspondents from your position today, working with an organization as wonderful as VOA? Yeah.
Thank you for that question. And I like what you said about supporters along the way. I can even as I told you, when I first came to the US, I was at Missouri, University of Missouri. I had so many supporters, and I worked at the international program where we had a lot of people coming in from all over the world. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. People who came from places where there's a restriction, all kinds of walks of life. But I had supporters along the way, people who opened the doors for me at the journalism school, professors who believed in me, gave me opportunities. I remember hosting a magazine program that was only hosted by faculty members when I first came in, because people really believed in me. And so what you said about support is very important in our profession. I mean, by design, anything you publish goes through editing and things like that, but people have to believe in you and support you throughout for you to succeed. Journalism is a teamwork. Whatever, if you see a TV piece, a web article, it goes through a lot of editing to make it work. And sometimes saving you from yourself and saying things that might not be right. And so that support system is I cannot emphasize on that more than what you just have done. But what I would say to a correspondent or a foreign journalist that might be coming maybe to the US and other places starting late or early in their career, I would say embrace adaptability. Each country, each place that you go to, understand the journalistic culture, carry your principles, your journalistic principles, and understand that. And understanding that is very important because it helps you build strong network of local reporters. Reach out to reporters. By the way, reporters always, yes, it is very competitive, but if you're starting off or if you're trying to settle, just make contacts, they will be your source of contacts to begin with in this profession. And also they might help you find sources, authentic sources, and perspectives that might enrich your reporting. So always don't be afraid to expand your network outside from the circle that you have. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that might not have the opportunity to speak up. In fact, some people or colleagues would say, what's your favorite or your top reporting, and they would mention, the president of this or whatever. I always get joy out of interviewing average people, because I feel authorities always have their own platforms, their own media, and now the media has been democratized. Everybody can have their own channel, but I always stress the people that I am very proud of interviewing are either family members or of people who might be going through something, average people that might not have the platform to speak up. And so take note of that and reach out to people who might not have the opportunity to speak. As I said, stay true to your values, and remember that's as a reporter, your unique, cultural experiences might shape and bring different perspective to your reporting. We've talked about our background and maybe family members' background that shaped our worldview. That perspective is unique always, and remember that you do bring a different voice to this communication world, I guess. And so don't ever think that is not something, a value that you cannot replace, or you tell your story differently because of your experiences, and it allows you to tell stories resonate with both local and global audiences. Always remember that we are living in a global world, and whether we like it or not, we are all interconnected. And so think that way, that you have a place in this profession, and that your unique reporting brings a unique perspective. And so I would say that. But I would also say that take advantage of the value and the purpose that this profession brings, to make sure that you carry the principles, period. I mean, always remember that you are out to tell stories in for public service, and that your reporting has value in informing, connecting with people. So that's what I would say for anybody that might be starting or halfway in their mid-career, or and feel like there isn't an opportunity out there. There is always an opportunity. It really is the way you make it. And don't be afraid to reach out to reporters, is what I would say.
That is a wonderful, wonderful response to end on, Salem. I want to thank you, of course, for your participation and for sitting here with me today. It is always my honor. It's always my honor and my pleasure just to sit here, and like you said earlier, it's about listening, right? I love getting to listen to not just the average person, but certainly to people like you, because sitting here, I just want to say that I really admire how much of a testament to excellence you are. So,
That's
yes.
nice. Very kind of you to say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for reaching out, and keep up bringing all the voices of reporters that we might not be able to get access to. So I look forward to listening and tuning to your channel to see who else you're going to be speaking to. So thank you for this opportunity.